them at the worst parts, the best parts. This is the best of the rest.
Hello, and when's the last time you got a VCR repaired? Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at a comic book movie that was poorly received upon release, but challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by my older, grumpier co-host, Andrew Williams. Andrew, are you ready to jump into this one, sir?
I am.
All right. See, you're like the old gruff veteran, and I'm the rookie. Is like the movie?
Oh, sorry.
The buddy cop.
I am.
That sounded no different than your first take, but I'm gonna roll with it. Andrew, what is your history with this movie, R.I.P.D? Did you see this in theaters?
I did. I saw this at an Alamo Drafthouse, no less.
Nice.
Yeah, I think at the time I'd seen the trailers, and Jeff Bridges, Ryan Reynolds. I was like, what could go wrong? So I think with my girlfriend at the time, we rolled up, saw this one at an Alamo Drafthouse back when it was over on Mason, and haven't seen it since.
Until this week, preparing for this podcast, right?
Until about 6 hours ago, yeah.
I did not see this movie in theaters. I remember the trailers very well, and the movie itself kind of just came and went. I didn't hear anybody talk about this movie. Didn't hear anything positive, but really didn't hear anything negative about it either. But from the trailers, from kind of the vibe, the feel, even the title being abbreviated to R.I.P.D, I was just thinking that looks like Men in Black with ghosts instead of aliens. And now that I've watched this movie, Andrew, it's kind of like Men in Black, but with ghosts instead of aliens.
Basically, that's essentially what this movie is.
I know this is based on its own comic. It's not that derivative from MIB to just actually replace that with ghosts instead of aliens. But I don't know anything about the comic book. I haven't read it. But at some point, there's no doubt in my mind, either writing the comic, adapting the script, or a producer at the studio, somebody along the line said, I want this to be Men in Black, but ghosts instead of aliens. Somebody made that comparison. There's too many things happening here for it to be coincidental. And that doesn't mean it's good or bad. Men in Black is awesome.
Right,
we can use more of that. That's fine. But let's go ahead and set the stage a little bit before we dive into the movie. The movie being I guess the official name is R.I.P.D, right? Like it stands for Rest in Peace Department. That's on the posters, but I think the title is officially just R.I.P.D.
It is. That is the title.
The movie was released July 19th of 2013, made on a budget of $140 million. At the box office, it brings in 78.3, certainly underperforming. I mean, the studio went all in on making this movie budget-wise. Some reports even report higher than $140 million. It's kind of all over the place, a little bit of Hollywood math going on there, but regardless of where that budget landed, they were losing money.
That's a lot of money to sink into this movie. I mean, just really the idea that like R.I.P.D, which is not like, it's not like a well-known comic. Like it's not even something like, say, The Walking Dead, or even something like Chew, which like came and went pretty quick and had like a big moment where like it was gaining some traction. This is R.I.P.D, and the studio put almost $150 million into this. Like that's a lot to put on a generally untested concept. Or maybe they saw it as like, well, this is just like Men in Black. Everyone will like it. So I don't know, but it is definitely. I saw that budget number and I was like, whoa. Somebody was confident.
Now, critically, the movie is not well received. Just a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is among the lowest we've covered on this show. Like, to get below 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, especially for modern movies, which have a lot of reviews typically, it's pretty hard to do.
It is indeed. Can't say, but this is, you mentioned it earlier, like, this came and went. Like, I saw it in theaters. Like, I remember it coming out, but like, nobody I knew saw it. Nobody talked about it. I wouldn't be shocked if this was out of theaters within like a month by and large. People just moved on because this was 2013. So I'm sure there was other stuff coming in and around then that people just moved on to. But this, 2013, that's really when the summers, I think, start getting really crowded with movies. So I think this is easy enough for it to just almost disappear. But yeah.
The movie was written by the creative team of Phil Hay and Matt Manfredi. Now, the duo were responsible for movies like the Aeon Flux theatrical adaptation, as well as the Clash of the Titans remake. Movies you've probably heard of, not a ton of big hits, but definitely out there, working steady, and this was one of their collaborations.
Yeah, they were also responsible for the Kevin Hart Ice Cube ride along films for those that saw those.
I guess that one was.
Also,
I did not see that, but that made a lot of money.
It got a sequel, so it made something. And they also, this is a bit of an odd kind of thing in there. They wrote a film called Destroyer in 2018, starring Nicole Kidman. We're neo-noir, like crime film. That's not bad. Worth checking out. Nicole Kidman, Toby Kebbell, not bad. But yeah, I mean, a varied history, and now they work on a mystery television series called The Mysterious Benedict Society. So I mean, these guys are out there doing their thing. This was kind of early on, I guess. Ride Along, it was kind of a big hit the next year, but been working consistently since 2001. So good for them.
The movie's directed by Robert Schwentke. Now, no stranger to films, this guy. Movies before this, such as Flight Plan and The Time Traveler's Wife, kind of mid-budget hit movies, directed R.I.P.D, and after would go on to direct a couple movies in the Divergent series.
Also directed a comic book film before this called Red, which is actually a film that I actually kind of quite like, starring Bruce Willis, Morgan Freeman, John Malkovich, Helen Mirren, Mary Louise Parker, Brian Cox, Carl Urban. Bit of a stacked cast. Richard Dreyfuss, like everybody you know is in Red. It's genuinely a crazy stacked movie with a crazy stacked cast. And that's another one that's technically an acronym because I think it stands for Retired Extremely Dangerous.
Hey, look at that, 2 in a row.
Yeah, but yeah, it's I actually do really like Red. It's one of those. It was for a while there. It was being described as like a version of the Expendables just for old actors, and I was like, well, what's the Expendables? But
Say it. Sounds exactly like the Expendables. No, I agree though. I like Red a lot. I saw that in theaters actually and enjoyed it very much. And as much as I like that movie, Andrew, I've never seen Red 2. Did you see the sequel?
I did.
Is it worth watching if you enjoyed the first one?
I think, yeah, absolutely. The second one's directed by Dean Parasot, who did Galaxy Quest, Bill and Ted 3, and a bunch of others that I really, really like. So obviously he's no slouch. But yeah, I did. I mean, it's very much if you liked Red, I don't think there's any reason you wouldn't enjoy Red 2.
It's one of those many, many movies that I own but haven't watched. It's quite a long list. One last credit I want to point out is he actually directed the pilot to a TV show called Lie to Me, starring Tim Roth, which is a very good show. It lasted, I think, only 3 seasons, though. I very much enjoyed it. I wished it lasted longer. I love Tim Roth, and I think he was perfect to lead that show, and I just want to give a quick shout out to that. Lie to Me, check it out. I don't know why. I don't make any money off of that, but
who knows? Hey, if it's a good show, it's a good show. One other credit, a person who here got a story credit, but not a screenplay credit, was David Dobkin, who's a director in his own right, but has scattered writing credits, including on Ice Cream Man, the 1995 comedy slasher starring Clint Howard, the one of the Howard brothers, but also then had a story credit on Jack the Giant Slayer, R.I.P.D, The Judge, and King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. So a lot of hands in the pot on this one. It feels like it was potentially gestating around for a while there before it finally found its way to the screen.
There is one more credit I want to point out. The movie is scored by Christoph Beck, who we talked about back on the Elektra episode, and even played a sample of that score because, man, it went hard. So I like to shout out Christoph Beck anytime he comes up now. Plus, we share a birthday, which is just cool. But let's go ahead and jump into this movie, R.I.P.D. Nick Walker is a Boston City detective with sometimes questionable morals who was killed by his corrupt partner after backing out of a deal. On his way to the afterlife, he is offered a job with the R.I.P.D, or Rest in Peace Department. In return for hunting down rogue souls, he is promised more leniency with his judgment. After being partnered with the veteran Roy Cephas, the duo uncover a plot to bring all lost souls back to Earth that leads Nick back to his own murderer. What twist. It was Kevin Bacon.
It's like 1 degree of Kevin Bacon.
It always comes back to Kevin Bacon. Yeah.
Didn't even have to go through the full 6.
Quite a...
I want to say it's a standard plot, but it's really not. Like
it's not. But I like the hook of this movie as much as I was talking about how derivative it sounds and kind of is. It's fun. It sets it up very quickly. Ryan Reynolds dies like minutes into the movie. Bam, here's their IPD. You're hunting down, I say ghosts, but they call them deados. They look more like mutants that only they can see. And we're off to the races. I mean, the setup is very fast. It's not that complicated, but it's a fun place to start.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's kind of a like Men in Black by the way of Ghostbusters by the way of Ghost.
Well, Andrew, first thing we're gonna do is jump into the cast of this movie, starting at the high point, the best casting, best performance of the film. Every episode, we recognize one person who goes so far above and beyond the call of duty that they raise the quality of the entire film, or at least the role that they were given. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. Andrew, kick us off. Who gets your Mark Strong Award for R.I.P.D?
I am going to go ahead and give it to Jeff Bridges as Roy Cephas, Roy Pulsifer.
Roy Cephas.
Roy Cephas. Obviously, this is Jeff Bridges just kind of like riffing on things like True Grit and other westerns he's done in his time. He's playing just a version of that same type of character, but obviously set in more of like a modern setting. But he is an Old West lawman who died in the 1800s and has basically been seemingly working for the R.I.P.D. ever since. But Jeff Bridges is having fun with it. He's leaning into the drawl. He's making every single Old West reference and joke that you can. I do think that him and Reynolds they work pretty good as an on-screen partnership. Maybe they don't do as much with it as they could, or maybe they kind of just go for some of your more classic tropes to just kind of give them friction that they get over. But overall, I think Jeff Bridges is giving it his all. He's having fun. I mean, Jeff Bridges himself has said that the experience of making this film was very positive. He spoke highly about working with the cast and crew and the director. So I think it shows through that he's having a good time here.
I agree 110%. Jeff Bridges, also my Mark Strong Award winner. You mentioned the chemistry that he has, the way he plays off him is fun, but even just Jeff Bridges being Jeff Bridges, which he's a lawman from the 1800s in modern times because he's been in the RPD for well over 100 years at this point. It sounds like a convoluted excuse just to have Jeff Bridges play a lawman from the 1800s.
Play a cowboy, basically, yeah.
Exactly. And definitely playing off of the image we have of Jeff Bridges from various westerns that he's been in. And this gives him a chance to be a little bit silly with it. He's definitely not a very serious character. And this movie, it's heavy on tropes. We've mentioned a few of them already. It's definitely like buddy cop. Ryan Reynolds is the new guy. He's kind of a lot of exposition for us as the audience, an audience surrogate. He gets partnered up with the old veteran, Roy. But he's not... I'll use Men in Black as an example. Agent K, the veteran there, like, knows everything forwards and backwards. Roy isn't really all that competent. He's not a klutz or anything, but Ryan Reynolds, his character Nick, is bringing plenty to the table and teaching Roy a thing or two. So it's not quite the traditional setup there, which I thought was fun. It definitely sets it up to be like, oh, he's got to earn this guy's respect, but he's just a goofball.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges has a blast and it shows.
Now, did you see this, Andrew? According to Collider, Zach Galifianakis was originally cast in this role. He dropped out due to scheduling conflicts. That's not the same character, right? Like, if it's Zach Galifianakis, he's not a cowboy from the 1800s. It can't be.
I would assume not. I would assume you would play that differently. Like, I haven't read the comic, full disclosure, so I have no idea what the like original setup is, or even if these are characters from the comic. But yeah, I can't imagine Zach Gallivan, because like Jeff Bridges' character is an 1800s lawman, but like that's not integral to the plot. Like, you could make that character have any background. He could be a guy who went after Dillinger for all you know, and it could play like that without any real trouble. So I would definitely wouldn't be shocked if it was like, oh, we got Jeff Bridges. Why don't we? Yeah, just have him do True Grit again. Like, except you know. But yeah, I can't even see that. Like, Zach Galifianakis and Ryan Reynolds in a movie together that's not the confusing part, but just I can't see Zach Galifianakis playing that version of the character.
Right. Ryan Reynolds, we've mentioned him a few times already. He plays the lead of this movie, Nick Walker. And I don't mean this disparagingly. He plays Ryan Reynolds. I think you just, by and large, if it's a comedic movie, you know what to expect from Ryan Reynolds. Now, that being said, we were a little harsh, as far as a hashtag positivity podcast can be, back on our Blade Trinity episode. And Ryan Reynolds' performance in that movie, it was a little much. This is definitely more toned down. It's not R-rated unnecessarily. It's a PG-13 movie, so it's toned down in that way. But also, you're just playing more of a well-rounded character. Not every line of dialogue is a sarcastic joke from him. It's a lot more realized. It's a lot, closer to his Deadpool. How close are we to Deadpool? What is this, 2013?
Deadpool is 3 years after this.
Okay, so he's dialing it in. He's getting there.
It's definitely more subtle. I think that was the thing that I was like, he's definitely like, he's still got his quips. He's still got he's still Ryan Reynolds, but like, whereas in Blade Trinity, like every single line was a joke or a gag or a comeback or something. Here, it's just because there is a bit of an emotional core to the character, unlike Blade Trinity. Like, Ryan Reynolds' character does have an emotional piece to this that he's concerned with. So there are times where he's playing it fairly straight. And most of his comedy is kind of playing off of like Mary Louise Parker or Jeff Bridges. So it's more situational. It's more it's just more subtle. So like it's not blasting you in the face the whole time. So it's a little bit more of a nuanced performance than something like Blade Trinity, I think. But yeah, like you said, definitely on the path to getting that right balance for Deadpool.
Mary Louise Parker is in this movie as Mildred Proctor. She's essentially their boss at R.I.P.D. And this is a weird but fun character and performance. I couldn't even like put my finger on what exactly this is. So normally this is a little bit of an inversion of a trope. Normally, she wears like a pencil skirt a lot, and this would be like the uptight boss who's always yelling, coming down on him. But like, she flirts with Jeff Bridges' character. They seem to have a history, and she just seems a little bit goofy, but not in like a dumb way. There's some strange scenes, but I think Mary Louise Parker was having a blast with this character.
I think so. And this is another one where it definitely shows. I think she got to kind of she's, Reynolds' first introduction to the whole concept of the Rest in Peace department. Kind of playing that, I guess, Rip Torn adjacent type role, their boss who kind of is at the top, kind of having to guide everybody through this. But yeah, she's definitely having some fun, some weird scenes with Jeff Bridges. Can't stress that enough, especially towards the end. But yeah, it, like I said, looks like she's having a blast with it too. Like I said, hearing that Jeff Bridges like had a blast working with everybody, like I think you can definitely look at this cast and see that they all played off each other really well. And they were all having a pretty good time doing this.
Kevin Bacon, we mentioned, is in this movie as Bobby Hayes, as our villain, the bad guy, which Kevin Bacon is so good at playing. I wouldn't say he can only play bad guys. He's played the good guy plenty of times. He's just a great all-around actor. Dare I say the greatest actor of all time. But really, I like my Kevin Bacon as a bad guy. Something about the way Kevin Bacon is like, he's not skinny, like frail, but he's a smaller guy with like this too deep for his body, gravelly voice. It just feels like a bad guy.
Yeah, he play, he anytime he's the bad guy, this X-Men First Class, whatever, he just takes to it really well, with no issues, and this is no exception. A lot of what he's doing here initially is pretty standard boilerplate corrupt cop type stuff, which, if you're gonna do it, get Kevin Bacon to do it. But he gets a chance to dig his teeth in a little bit deeper as the movie goes along, and Kevin Bacon chews that scenery.
Stephanie Shostak plays Julia Walker, Nick's wife, quickly turned widow at the beginning of this movie. Not a ton of screen time for the most part, but does factor in pretty prominently into the end of this movie. She has to be a human sacrifice. That old chestnut. But I think she does a good job with what she's given. She's a sweet, caring wife. There's a moment where it's revealed to her that Nick may have been up to some shady things, and she kind of has some doubts about her former husband, but they are able to reunite by the end of the movie, and it's a sweet moment.
It is. She basically, she's a widow. She's a grieving widow for most of this movie. We get some interesting moments where, like, Ryan Reynolds they get these avatars, so he's trying to reach out to her, but he looks like an old Asian man. So it creates a weird dissonance. But and she trusts Kevin Bacon's character, and that ultimately becomes a problem that literally gets her stabbed, because he turns out to not quite be who we think he is. But yeah, she's making the most of what she's got here, and, she comes off as genuine.
There's a few more bit parts we could get into, but there are two specifically that I want to touch on right now that have oddly important roles, and I say that because they play our lead characters' avatars. So living people, whenever they see members of the R.I.P.D, they don't see them how they actually look. They see a different person altogether. They hear a different person altogether. They get assigned these identities in the R.I.P.D. So for Roy, again, this is played by Jeff Bridges. His avatar is played by a woman named Marissa Miller, who is, what should we say, Andrew? A young, attractive blonde woman?
She's a Victoria's Secret model. That's who Marissa Miller is. So, you can see the visual there of Jeff Bridges being physically represented by a swimsuit model, and it's a well
that the movie goes to many times.
Many times.
Ryan Reynolds' character, his avatar, is played by James Hong, who they often call Grandpa or Chin. The GOAT, James Hong. Who is James Hong, Andrew? Why do you say this?
James Hong is the greatest actor of all time. I don't know what you're talking about. Namely, he's one of the villains in Big Trouble in Little China, but this dude's been in movies since the 50s. And he's still acting today. Had a bit part in Everything Everywhere All at Once as the grandfather. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I haven't yet. I would like to. I hear very good things.
It is very good. He voices Mr. Ping in the Kung Fu Panda movies. But yeah, I definitely remember him probably heavily from Big Trouble in Little China, where he plays David Lopan. And he's one of our big villains of that movie. And it is awesome. He literally, you've seen him everybody has seen him in dozens of things, because he's that kind of actor. He was in Wayne's World 2, amongst all things. He's everywhere.
All at once?
Everywhere. Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Andrew, I think it's time we can talk about the scenes of this movie, and we're going to start with our favorite scenes of the movie. Andrew, in your opinion, when is R.I.P.D firing on all cylinders? What is your favorite scene of this movie?
My favorite scene is going to be the finale of the film. This is kind of the culmination of where the story has been going, because that's what climaxes of films are, Andrew. But basically at this point, Roy and Nick have kind of overcome their personal tension. They understand what's at stake here. They're both on the same page. There's some good shots of them finally working as a team, watching out for each other, working back and forth. And I think that all comes off really, really well. Obviously, we do, unfortunately, go back to the classic Sky Portal. Sky Portals, man. 2013. Sky Portals were in, man. Everybody had a Sky Portal in 2013. But yeah, I think this all comes out good. Obviously, Kevin Bacon has been revealed as our master villain. He has kind of assumed his Deado look, which is pretty gnarly. Like his head has a split in it and everything. It's ridiculous. It's like Kevin Bacon has such a beautiful face. What are you doing?
Well, I do like that design because most of the Deados we see throughout this movie, like when they're in disguise, they're played by an actor, and then whenever they show their Deado form, it's all CG. I should say it's all 2013 CG. It doesn't hold up the best, but they don't look really human anymore. They get very exaggerated features. Some are like really fat or really long arms or giant mouth, but Kevin Bacon still looks like Kevin Bacon, just a kind of just deformed, scary version, and I actually really like that design.
Yeah, it was a cool look. So we got our final confrontations here. Kevin Bacon and Ryan Reynolds have their face-off, sort of, where Ryan Reynolds is just repeatedly getting beat up, but he can't die, so he's just getting like his head caved in repeatedly while Jeff Bridges tries to stop the Sky Portal, and then ultimately Ryan Reynolds is able to get his revenge and have his kind of brief moment to explain to his wife just kind of what the deal is and how it's all. They get their brief moment to reconcile, and she gets to see him as she originally saw him, kind of free from the stigma Kevin Bacon was trying to throw on him. And it's a sweet little scene at the end of this. But yeah, go with the finale. Cool teamwork action.
A lot of cool little moments here. I really like. I'm always a sucker for the villain going for a dramatic monologue only to be cut off by the hero. And I really like that Nick has Kevin Bacon's character at gunpoint about to kill him. And again, this is his old partner when he's alive. And Kevin Bacon starts by saying, "Well, partner." And Nick just cuts him off, says, "I have a new partner." Blasts him away. Kills him. Love it.
Boom.
Always love it.
Beautiful.
It's good.
Can't go wrong.
Good pick. Fun finale. Not what I picked as my favorite scene, but there's some kinetic, fun action beats in this movie, and I'm going to go with one of those. My favorite scene, I wrote it down as the R.I.P.D. heist. So in this scene, I know Kevin Bacon's character has a name, but he's Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon essentially allows himself to be captured.
It's Bobby. My brother's name is Bobby.
Bobby. Ugh. That's an insult to your brother. I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, don't do that to potential friend of the show, my brother.
You know, Andrew, a few episodes back, we had a question of the week asking us for examples of a villain allowing themselves to be caught. Here's one right here. R.I.P.D. Certainly, I did not think of this whenever we were answering that question, because I had never seen this movie. But
Neither did I. I had.
He allows himself to get captured so we can go to the R.I.P.D. Now, he has in his possession half of a device, artifact, weapon, something. And he had given one of his goons the other half, and he intentionally got captured. So they reunite at R.I.P.D. headquarters. Everything they have on them is getting put into evidence. And those two halves, Andrew, what do? They combine and become I'm going to say bomb because it explodes, but not in the traditional sense. It creates this giant field that slows everyone down except the Deados, except the bad guys, essentially. So they get to run amok amongst the R.I.P.D. as our heroes are stuck watching them in slow motion. It's a cool concept. It's executed pretty well.
Yep.
I made that slight about the CGI earlier. Some of the effects of this movie feel very 2013. This slow-mo effect, most of the scenery and characters moving slow-mo, but the Deados moving at normal speed, holds up very well. It's very fun, and one of the reasons this is my favorite scene of the movie.
Yeah, this is a fun, like I said, it's a fun little twist on it. Like, obviously, they think they've gotten the jump on Kevin Bacon at this point. They capture him at his house and everything. Also, a gnarly sequence when they capture him at the house and he takes the charm off and he just, like, the house, like, decays in real time. But, yeah, this is just a fun little twist. Obviously, Kevin Bacon's, like, not concerned at this point. He knows what the deal is. They obviously escape just right as Jeff Bridges blows up the slowdown device. But yeah, this is a good, fun little action sequence. Little twist. Like obviously, it's kind of a cool effect. Creates for an interesting heist scenario, and yeah, good pick.
So, just in case anyone listening hasn't seen the movie or hasn't seen it for a while, a Deado, the bad guys in this movie, are essentially ghosts, but like we said, they don't look like ghosts. Essentially, the people that have died are supposed to go and get judged, but are on the run instead. And one way or another, they've escaped that, and they're hiding here on Earth in disguise. And Kevin Bacon, the twist there is his character is a Deado, but most people obviously don't know that. He's able to kind of resume his life that he had. He reveals late in the movie that he was actually shot on the job and died, but snuck back in and has been living in this ruse. And that's whenever he takes off that bracelet you mentioned, you see his house as it actually is and how all this stuff has decayed, but, he's been keeping up appearances. There's this weird thing in the movie, speaking of these disguises, where I hate to keep going back to MIB, but it's just seems so obvious. But it feels like a very MIB thing where, like, to get the Deados out of their disguise, you expose them to spicy foods. Indian food does the trick. They use curry powder a few times. This weird, random thing that does that. It reminds me of Men in Black, because they'll do, you know what, drink salt water and leaves a slime trail, like just random, like, oh, of course that's a rule in this universe. You know what I mean?
Sugar water, Chris.
Sugar. Oh, excuse. How could I? Sugar in water. How could I forget?
How dare you? You come into my house
mixed up.
No, I mean, I see what they're going for here. There's a scene where they're genuinely like interrogating somebody, and Jeff Bridges is just like eating Indian food while he does it, and you see the guy getting like increasingly more uncomfortable. There's another sequence where Ryan Reynolds like they're walking into a freezer, and he just like grabs this can of like cumin or something, and it's just like boom, and like they just start using it to kind of. The idea is that it's supposed to like make them want to talk, but when they expose them to it, I guess just they lose their human form, and I guess that's the whole reason they don't want it to happen. But yeah, I see what they're going for.
I'm gonna do one last MIB comparison, and then I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna retire this thing here. But yeah. I can't help but think of it when they're at R.I.P.D headquarters, which looks, it's got an MIB headquarters vibe to it. And then to travel to the surface, they get inside of a bathroom and push a button, and the bathroom goes up and lets them out inside of a building that turns out to be a VCR repair shop. And they walk out of the bathroom, and Ryan Reynolds' character is like, shouldn't this be hidden a little bit better? And Roy says, when's the last time you got your VCR repaired? It's the perfect way to hide in plain sight. And that is just, again, very Men in Black humor with the bathroom and the phony VCR repair with the phony guy sitting at the counter. I'm gonna stop doing these comparisons. I'm sorry, but those are definitely the vibes that I get from this movie, and I think it's what they were going for.
No, I don't disagree. I think they definitely the illusions were there, so I think they just kind of embraced it at a certain point. Because like if the concepts are that similar, there's only so much you can do to really differentiate it before you're just like off book at that point. So, but yeah, I thought that was a fun little twist. The whole joke of when's the last time you got a VCR repaired? Well, you got me there. I haven't owned a VCR in like a decade at this point. So, it's always it's so yeah.
See, now I'm going to be really suspicious of all these, those like, they'll be like connected to a gas station, and it's like,
yeah,
cell phone screen repair, or something really specific, which I know everyone has cell phones, unlike VCRs, but like, how is this place getting enough business that they can like open this shop here? And there's one on like every corner. Andrew, I think these might be fronts for something. I don't think it's the R.I.P.D.
I say, don't get my hopes up that the R.I.P.D. is real here, man.
I think it's a fun bit in the very beginning. It drops us into like, not the middle of the movie, but the first scene in the movie. Nick is already in the R.I.P.D. They're chasing this character down. Yeah. And then he says, 3 or 4 days ago, I wasn't even in the R.I.P.D. and it is a flashback, and the title card says 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah, I liked that one. That was a nice
really
little,
kind of sets the
little
tone
gag.
for the humor here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of humor, Roy, who again is really a comedic character. He's the veteran, he's the older guy, but he's not so much showing Nick the ropes as just being kind of weird and funny and goofy. I really like where Nick's character goes to see his own funeral, which apparently this is a pretty common thing. It's part of the acceptance process that you've passed away. And he's, standing back 20 feet away from the funeral or whatever, looking down from a hill. And Roy's there and he's behind him. He's like, we've got a lot to talk about, but I'm just going to step back, let you soak it in. This moment is not about me. It's about you. Letting go. And just won't shut up over his shoulder.
Won't stop talking. Yeah. Keeps talking about his funeral a lot. There's a running gag through the movie that basically he died from in the desert or something, and basically a bunch of coyotes dragged off his body and were eating it. So just throughout the movie, he just keeps making references to coyotes eating his body. And it's just a weird gag where you're just like, all right, haven't quite processed that one yet, have you?
Eating his body and making love with his skull. I think
To
that's
his
how he words
skull.
it. Yes.
Yeah, that's not a visual I needed to think about.
They do another gag that I love. One of my favorite comedic gags in movies. It is the unseen object sound effect. And the example here is he's the one driving in their car, and he tells them, when you ride with me, you ride with the best. And then you just hear him hit a trash can and knock it over. They don't show it or anything. Right after he says that line, he's just knocking over crap in the alley that they're driving through. Man, gets me every time. In the greatest comedy of all time, Wet Hot American Summer, there's a running bit with flower pots. Anytime an object goes off frame, even just a little bit, you hear a flower pot break as if it smashed into something. Kills me every time. I love it. There's an odd running gag in this movie. 3 words, Andrew. Relax your body. So they can't die, but they can feel pain. But they are in situations where oftentimes they have to say, jump 10 stories down or get into a car accident on purpose. And if you relax your body, it doesn't hurt as much. There's a scene where Nick is hesitant to jump out the window. And then Roy comes up and just tackles him through the window. They're falling through the air. And then Andrew, on my screen, is Jeff Bridges riding Ryan Reynolds like a Bronco through the air with his hat up in the air and everything. And it's just, I didn't think that was something I was going to see ever in my life.
Yeah, you forget. I forgot that was a thing, and now it's going to be in my brain forever, probably. There's not much I can do about that.
It's a wild movie, this is.
It is indeed.
We've mentioned that living people see them as avatars, as these different characters that look nothing like them. And there's a lot of kind of hand waving as far as well, why don't you just go back to people you love? Tell them a secret that only they would know. And Roy explains that if you try to say who you are, it just comes out as gobbledygook. And then for visuals, because they're running around hunting deados with their weapons, there's a quick shot where you see Nick's avatar. Nick is holding his gun, but the avatar is just holding a banana out like it's a gun.
Yeah.
So these people look insane to everyone else.
Yeah, that's a definitely, we see James Hong running around with a banana, just nothing to see, and just keeps running around and just doing everything. It's a pretty mix for some fun visual humor there.
This movie, as we mentioned, is not without its tropes and well-worn material, we'll say. And so they've established this world with the R.I.P.D. and deados and everything, and the ultimate plot of the movie is that the deados are trying to reassemble this old artifact, the Staff of Jericho. And what this artifact does is reverse the portal that is sucking up all the souls from Earth. It's going to start spitting them all back out. filling the earth with essentially deados and wiping out the living. That's what they're trying to do. So,
Yep.
Why does this artifact exist, you might say? Well, the characters in the movie agree with you. Whenever he learns about it, Roy just says, why would someone make something like that? Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't get a better explanation than that. It's just an artifact that exists, and they're trying to get it.
Yeah, I do. I always appreciate it when even the characters are just like, wait, who would do this?
Most of the movie, we've mentioned, Roy is a bit of a goofball, and it's kind of a play on his typical cowboy persona. He does explain that, yes, in my day, I bought my love by the hour. Just drops that line. But he does get his badass moment. He gets his Old West saloon style shootout moment with some deados. And they are essentially, they have the R.I.P.D trapped, and they're calling him out. And he says, they picked the wrong day to make a stand. I invented this shit. And it's genuinely a pretty badass line. And he walks out, he does an old, high noon, draw the gun, blast him in the head. Totally serious, not a joke that time, and it works.
Yeah. Plays it straight, and it comes off good.
The last gag in the movie, Andrew, is, these avatars, they look nothing like them. Nick is particularly upset with his grandpa Chinese guy. So Roy gets him a new identity, which we see is a 12-ish-year-old Girl Scout with braces. Is his final identity. Yeah. That's got to cause some problems, right? At least she's driving around. Do you feel like they would get pulled over unnecessarily or something?
You would think. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I think the Girl Scouts enrollment ends at 18. So if you're driving as a Girl Scout, you got to be cutting it close there.
It's a shame that they didn't get a sequel to this movie, and we get to see a whole movie with that Girl Scout running around shooting people with a banana.
A Girl Scout running around shooting people with a banana alongside an underwear supermodel. Because, sure, why not?
Andrew, we are rapidly approaching episode 60 of this podcast. Gonna be a big one.
Yes, it is.
Can't say more than that, but I'm excited. I'm excited for everybody to hear it. But for now, we're going to go to our Discord and answer a question of the week. This week, our question comes from Reyes. They ask, talk about the term fan service. I see it used as a crutch for negative reviews. What does it mean to the two of you? Fan service. I guess, in terms of movies specifically. If a movie is full of fan service, Andrew, what does that mean?
I mean, I've heard it described a lot of ways. I've heard whole movies described as fan service, where it feels like the movie only exists for fan service. But, getting back to the basic, like, what is fan service? Fan service in general, as far as I can tell, is defined as like something within a movie, or in some cases, like I said, the whole movie itself, that seems to only be there just so that typically, I don't know how you describe it, the more diehard fans, it's a reference almost exclusively more for diehard fans. To
existing fans of that franchise, I guess.
Yeah, so like it's something that's probably going to go past the regular viewer. So a more recent example that I think you could point to would be, say, Avengers Endgame, where Captain America picks up Thor's hammer and uses it to fight Thanos briefly, and then uses it throughout the rest of the film. There's no story reason for that to happen. That doesn't need to happen. Like, Captain America doesn't need to pick up Thor's hammer, but it's something he's done in the comics, and it's something that just creates a cool visual. So, you do it, not necessarily because the story dictates it or because the story uses it. In the Marvel movies at that point, Mjolnir was destroyed. He literally borrows it from another universe earlier in the film, just so it shows up at the end. It's a series of events that really are all done just to have a moment where Cap picks it up, but he doesn't need to do that. Like, the movie, you could have done the movie without that, and the plot would be the same. So it's a moment that, like, for a diehard fan that's read those comics, that knows that Cap has done that before, they're going to be like, oh yeah, it's going to hit for them even harder than your average fan's going to be like, oh cool, Cap's picking up Thor's hammer, that's pretty sweet. So it's stuff kind of like that, where like it's a reference that like on the base level, your casual fan will be like, oh hey, that's pretty rad, but your fans with the built-in knowledge or the existing history or the lifelong fandom or whatever, it's something that hits really hard for them. Something that is just a big deal. And these can be minor things, they can be big things, they can be, like, it can even be like a gag. Like, take like Spider-Man No Way Home, where like they're like standing around on the Statue of Liberty, and at one point Tobey Maguire's just like, my back, and he's like flat, and that's the whole meme of Spider-Man crashing in Spider-Man 2 going, my back. Like, it's only there to reference that joke and that meme. There's no other reason to do it. The movie doesn't dictate it, but it's still a fun moment that if you know the history you're gonna point at screen, oh, they did the thing. Like, that's
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with Reyes that I often hear it implied to be in negative context.
Right.
But whenever I look at examples of it, it's hard to really be mad at it, even if it doesn't like work for me. Like, I like the examples that you've given. Those are fun. I think the Star Wars sequel trilogy is full of fan service. I mean, from bringing back legendary characters, and sure, most of them are serving a story purpose, but whenever they say a classic line or another character says a classic line to them, like, it's all nods at the past, hitting on nostalgia, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It's hard for me to find an example of fan service that I can point to and be like, man, that brought my enjoyment of the movie down. That being said, I am a bit of a nerd, and most of the fan service is targeted at me and working for me, so maybe from an outside perspective, you can find something that feels a bit too much, but I think it's fine. I think it can be used as a dismissive way, but it's a little bit hollow. A term that you and I have talked about a bit, Andrew, is when people will call a movie a cash grab, and they mean that as an insult, but break down what they're really saying. Man, this movie wants to make money. Man, that's every movie. No matter
I was going to say, I don't know if you know this, but that's literally every single movie in the history of the world. It's interesting. Like, yeah.
I get their intention behind it. I mean, they're saying that, there's no artistic merits there to make money, and that's a bad thing. I get what they're saying, but like, you take it at face value, it's pretty hollow. And same thing about fan service. If someone's using it negatively, they're probably trying to say it's not a strong plot. It's just trying to hit nostalgia without being meaningful. I get it, but yeah,
I kind of agree. Like, typically, if you watch a movie and your point is that the fan service derails the movie, well, that means it wasn't scripted very well, or it wasn't acted very well. Like, if the movie can't stand on its own and it's just all references, it just means it was badly made. Not badly made, but like, it just means that it's failing on another front. It's not the fan service that's derailing it. It's something else in the process. And the fan service is maybe the only thing left. I think I'll be a little critical of something that I actually really enjoyed, was the new Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'm not going to get too specific, but that movie has like a visual gag in almost every shot. Not a visual gag, but like a visual like thing in almost every shot. From
like a reference to the past.
Yeah, some movies. Reference. And I'm not even like here's one. They open up a glove box at one point and there's a Twinkie in it. Like, there's no reason for that. How long's that Twinkie been there? I know they have like a half-life of like 80 years, but like, why is there a Twinkie in the glove box outside just being like, oh, hey, you remember the Twinkie from the first Ghostbusters? Like, that sort of stuff. And if somebody were to come to me and say, I kind of wish Ghostbusters Afterlife had taken it a little bit easier on all the references. Like, at one point, they pull a candy bar out of a uniform pocket, and it's a candy bar that Bill Murray gave Harold Ramis at the beginning of the first movie. It's like, it's that kind of stuff. It's not just, it's deep gags too. And that's fine. But if somebody were like, I think it was all just a little much, I wouldn't be like, that's ridiculous. Like, it can be something where it comes so quickly and so fast that it's like, maybe let this story breathe on its own without having to do all the finger pointing. And I wouldn't think that's an invalid criticism.
Andrew doesn't like deep gags.
I watched a movie called that once. But
I think, yeah, I think that's.
But by and large,
take on fan service.
I think, but I agree generally. Like even Ghostbusters, like if your issue is that you think the fan service is too much, it probably means that the story itself isn't really working for you, and that's fine. But yeah, fan service or even cash grabs, they're all just used to dismiss something, and it's like, movies are not good or bad for one reason. So think about that.
And while you're thinking about that, why not hop into our Discord? We've got this countdown for episode 60. A lot of big announcements coming. If you want to be the first to hear about them, make sure you're there. Hang out with us, chat. Tell us about all, fan service examples that you like or maybe don't like. Head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a review for this show. We certainly appreciate it. I always ask you to go one step farther, leave a review for every podcast that you listen to regularly. It's something fast, free, and fun that you can do that the creators are certainly going to appreciate, and you can bet we will read your review on a future episode. And until then, remember that maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. Follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. Thanks to Mitch of Depressed to Impress for the music. Check him out on YouTube and Twitch.tv. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. That is the only way that we grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you. The movie is directed by Robert Schwentke. I'm just going to try to blow right through it, but Schwentke? The movie's Schwentke? Pronounce every letter, huh?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. German. It's German. You got to pronounce every letter. Schwentke!
That's post-credits.
I think just to make an easy comparison, something that just came out and we both saw and enjoyed was Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Some would say that
we're not spoiling that this soon.
That's right. You can't do that. So never mind. That's a bad one.